So yeah, we're delighted to have 4 people join us for this is our first panel in it's really a TED, EAP and TNE SIG joint event really. As you know, EAP happens in many different contexts, and so we thought we'd try and bring to people together from different contracts. We've got Evie De La Very from Greece, Liz Wildings, Reading and China, and sorry, I'm looking at everything. Maxine's based in Bristol in the UK, and Nina's in China but works with another UK university. So 2 TNE partners, one primarily UK based and one in Greece. The TED in EAP SIG tries to address interests of individuals in CPD, teacher education, and also for institutions. And so this part, although we can see a lot of the questions come on the individual and institutional aspect, it's really looking at, from an institutional perspective, what do centres offer, how do they get buy-in, and what questions do you have for them? So what we're going to do today is I'll very briefly introduce again the 4 speakers and their institutions. They're just going to say very briefly a little bit about what they do for CPD in their own institutions, and then Stella's going to lead the question and answer session, which is based on questions that you've provided for us. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end for additional questions. If you do have any questions as you're listening, please do add them to the chat, and we'll try and address them either in the session or collect them for later on. So as I said, we have Nina Tang, who's Deputy Director at ICUC, Communications University of China, which is CUC. She's responsible for graduate teaching affairs within Nottingham Trent University's Joint Institute. So we've got a TNE link here. Liz Wilding, is Professor of EAP at University of Reading. Liz is also another TNE bod here. She's role as Transnational Education Programme Director for International Study and Language Institutes, overseeing English programmes with Nanjing, NUIST, Reading and Nanjing. Evie De La Very's coordinator, you can see me reading off here because I haven't memorised it, coordinator of the writing programme at Derry College, American College in Greece. Teaching academic writing and researching for 30 years. I'll let her tell you more about her. And Maxine Gilway's director of the Centre for Academic Language and Development at the University of Bristol. So I'll maybe just start with Maxine. Could you just tell us a little bit about, just briefly, your centre, types of teachers you work with, and the CPD that you offer? Just a few minutes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so our centre is located within the faculty structure of our university. The university is just restructured, so we used to be in a small faculty, one of 6. Now we're in a much larger faculty, one of 3, Faculty of Arts, Law and Social Sciences. We have 81 teaching staff, not all EAP, about 2/3 EAP and 1/3 other subjects, because we offer an international foundation programme. And so we have colleagues teaching level 3 classes in maths and bioscience, economics, etc., law as well. We've quadrupled in size over the last, I'm going to say, 5 years. And so CPD was becoming more of a challenge. We don't have any, we don't offer any credit-bearing teacher education courses, because Bristol's Master in TESOL, for example, is in the School of Education, which is separate to our centre, although now we are in the same faculty. So what we focus on is CPD. In our centre, we call it ICD, Individual and Centre Development, in line with our principles, which are development, autonomy, collaboration, reflexivity, transparency, transferability. So focusing on the collaboration and the autonomy, and trying to get the balance right. up until last year, people had 13% of their workload allocation for scholarship and 17% for materials development outside of their teaching. Last year, we changed that in order to introduce more autonomy, because we didn't need everybody developing materials and not everybody was interested in that. So we now have this 30% that has a much more choice within it. And we've set up something called communities of practice along sort of the Wenger lines. And we have a classroom experience community of practice, a materials development community of practice, assessment and research and publication. And everybody is required to become an active participant in one of those communities of practice. But within those, there's lots of different sort of subgroups where people can exercise choice. But the key is that as well as developing themselves, they're developing the centre, and while developing the centre, they're developing themselves, I guess. We are offering one TEEP course at the moment, which is out for applications at the moment, leadership in TEEP, aiming at the senior fellow EAP TEEP group, and trying out this new sort of hybrid approach with long term with just a few days on campus and the rest online. That's probably enough. Sorry if I spoke too long there.
No, thank you. Thank you, Maxine. Liz, would you like to tell us a little bit about Reading?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm located in a unit called the International Study and Language Institute, which is technically an academic school at the university. So we don't have faculties. We have many, many schools. And one thing that entails is we are academic members of staff, and we're therefore sort of fully involved in the university, and we can take on the general staff development and training. Our particular school has carved out 10% of our workload for ongoing CPD, so continuing professional development and/or scholarship. We don't have any of the groups that Maxine mentioned. We did in the past. People tend to become involved in some of the BALEAP SIGs. We have an inordinate number of us involved in the SIG committees, I think, because of the interest in that. We do have an interest in encouraging scholarship in a very broad sense. We have a scholarship steering group. We have a teaching and learning scholarship fund that colleagues can apply to. And the idea is similar to what Maxine mentioned, where we're very keen to develop individuals' own scholarship and professional development in ways that suits them, but also that align with the strategic and long-term goals of the Institute, and trying to marry that up. Other things that we have I have to check the name, Language and Teaching Research Forum. We know it as the LTRF, where we have people internally present on teaching and learning practice, innovation, or scholarship. We sometimes have external speakers. That's really wonderful. I have nothing to do with that, so I can say that. We do other things to support people. We have mentors. We have people have access to the HEA training and development through the university, but I think that's probably enough for me for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz. Effie?
Well, the writing program is I'm the coordinator of the writing program. We're under the English department, so we're part of the faculty of the school. We belong to the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences. My job is mainly to coordinate the multiple. We have about 25 faculty members that teach in the writing program, some exclusively, some also teach in other areas. My job is primarily to help the induction of new faculty joining the program, or people from other areas coming into teaching writing, and also to align the multiple sections. At the moment, we have about I don't know how many sections of writing, 70, 80 sections. So we have 3 different writing courses. Students have to take these courses the first year. We have the American system of general education courses, so the students have a 4-year program. These are required courses for everybody, even native speakers. They're not for people who have English as a foreign or a second language. But although we have a big audience of speakers of English as a foreign language, there's a great emphasis in teaching, and professional development is usually part of professional development and also improvement of teaching. So it's these two are seen together. Professional development opportunities are offered not specifically by our department, but by the whole college. We have a Center for Teaching and Learning, which organizes seminars, or colleagues present best practices. So it's a place where people can share new teaching pedagogy issues. And the school also, the school as in general offers opportunities for research. There are some centers of excellence. So our program does not have a budget, so we cannot really support. We depend on the English department or the School of Liberal Arts for such opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Evie. And Nina, last but not least.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina from Communication University of China. And we have cooperation. We have a joint institute with NTU, where Stella comes from. Yes, I think EAP, the concept of EAP does not actually is seldom used in China, because we do have English modules in the college, in every university. Every college students are required to take the English course that is called College English. And they are required to take the College English Band 4 and Band 6. Okay, we have a foreign language studies college. The faculty from that college will be responsible for all the English course teaching in CUC. But luckily, since we are a joint institute, the students in our faculty, international faculty of CUC, teachers like Stella will be responsible for the English teaching of ICUC. And I'm glad to see that the English teaching by NTU professors have been developed within these almost 10 years, right? We have been cooperated for 8 years. I think there's a turning point. Before the pandemic, it's all about English course, while after the pandemic, we have we are turning to the cultural side of the English teaching. So I think that's very interesting for us to explore why there's this change, and how we can make the CPD connected with this change. Yes, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Stella now.
Right, yes, okay, so we've got what we'll do is, as Carol said, I'll go through some of the questions. Carol's going to be monitoring the chat bar, so if you do want to add any additional questions, we'll pick those up at the end. And I can also see, I've seen Natalie. So Natalie, what I'll do is, because you gave us quite a few questions, I'll hand over to you to actually directly ask your questions as well. So or maybe choose which are the most important. We'll just keep an eye on the time. I can't see Sam Evans, so I'm just going to start with the first question. So in TNE EMI context, EAP staff tend to come from a wide variety of backgrounds, usually ranging from a traditional path of CELTA Delta to the academic path of a bachelor's, master's and further research, and there's very little teaching practice. In these contexts, how do EAP teacher training, how does it need to be differentiated, and to what extent does this happen in practice? Any takers from our panel?
I can jump in because I do work in TNE. So one thing that we have is a partnership, as Carol introduced me, a partnership with China, the newest Reading Academy. And in that case, our partnership, they recruit the teachers and employ the teachers and work with us on the curriculum and the training. And this has been a question that's come up because we have teachers from all kinds of different background involved in the college English teaching that Nina mentioned, different backgrounds, not working in the UK type of EAP context. They might come from the US or from, well, all over the world or within the Chinese system. So when we set up the program, my predecessors hit this hard, and we had a 2-week residential CPD session here in the UK, because that's where we're based, in order to just get everyone together and do a lot of needs analysis. I mean, I know we talk about that in EAP a lot, but it's really true that it wasn't. The danger often is if it's too top down. We knew what we wanted, but there's always that need for the bottom up of what experience are our teachers bringing. And I'm saying this in the fairly idealistic way, because as those of you who've been involved in these programs know, it doesn't always work out the way you want. But this was the idea, is that there's this exchange where you do have teachers who may seem to have less experience in one area, and that may be true, but they've got a wealth of experience. In our case, we had a lot of teachers from the local context who knew so much about the students' needs and goals and what they wanted. And we really had a lot to learn from them about that. We did know a bit more about our own EAP curriculum and the goals and what we were trying to do and putting that together. So that was, I think, really worked well. We got really good feedback from our teachers on that program. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that. I could go on for hours about TNE and all of that.
I'm not in a TNE context, but I noticed in the chat someone was talking about EMI. And in my context, something that's come up in quite recently, where we have these other subject tutors within our centre, is that they are in fact EMI instructors, if you like. They have come to us mainly from high schools, or there's some from other IFP programs. But doing the observations, it was really interesting to notice that they were excellent teachers of the subject, but perhaps need further development in teaching language learners in that subject. So what was happening was fantastic engagement in the classroom, engagement with maths, for example, but not a lot of the language of maths or language happening in the classroom. So that's something that we're going to be focusing on as a centre, the whole oracy debate, because that's something that's coming up further in feedback from the university as well, that students coming in now on this huge range of different entry assessments that sprung up during COVID, people are now noticing that they're missing out on the pre-sessional courses that have shrunk since then, and they don't have the oracy. So I think there are common things that, you know, and even in EAP classroom post-COVID, the level of communication within the classroom has dropped. People just have their laptops and they show someone their screen rather than speaking. So we're having a real focus on generating oracy, generating classroom communication among the learners. Just something that came to me.
Can I just ask, Maxine, just because I know Liz was talking about TNE, but you have teachers with range of experience in your context as well, don't you? How do you cater for those needs?
Yeah, that's what I guess I was trying to say was, you know, we have an observation system, and identify needs through observation, and so different teachers have different needs there. We also do feedback observations, which might throw up different needs, and these observations of the classroom or the feedback feeds into CPD sessions. And the hope is that whereas in the past the CPD sessions were always led by myself and the deputy director team, the coordinators, now it will be led more by the communities of practice and people who have particular interest and want to do scholarship and development in those areas. So I guess that's, you know, it's through observation really that these things, the needs come out and are followed through.
I'd add as well, so Nina was sort of touching on this earlier about, you know, a number of us at NTU and ICUC, we've started these research projects, and there's quite a big group of us, and you know, the idea was to publish together, but actually coming from that has been an awful lot of training each other. You know, we're learning so much from each other, you know, in terms of publishing in China, publishing in the UK, setting up projects, data collection. I mean, there's a group of about 8 of us working on this, and you know, we found that incredibly useful, because I think one of the challenges with CPD and TNE is the two institutions agreeing, you know, they've often got separate training and CPD going on. So it's actually finding that middle ground where we're working together. And we've actually, I think we've done that kind of by accident. Would you agree, Nina?
Yeah, we had some cultural events with the students, and then yeah, we found that it would be interesting to get to know the students and also the teachers from both sides.
Yeah, and learn from each other, you know, with the project we're doing. I think it's been incredibly useful. Okay, shall I move on to the next question? Okay, let's move on. So we've got a question from John Cootie, and he says, in the quest to incorporate large language models into the teaching of writing, do you anticipate that this activity will require more input from teachers or less? Any thoughts?
May I mean, I've been reading about AI all year, and it has been pretty shocking. And I have some pretty strong thoughts about it, but I won't go there. So far, it seems to be a lot of work trying to understand how this works, trying to understand how it can be used, if it can be used. I don't believe very much into, you know, just, you know, using it just because it's a new toy. But I think we need to be a bit critical until we figure out how this works. So I think at this point, I think it needs a lot of work from the instructor. Also, some instructors are not so comfortable using technology. So this is, I mean, after getting used to all these platforms after the COVID era, now new technology to familiarize ourselves with. I mean, I've read and I've seen uses of AI that kind of lighten up the instructor's load. But at this point, I think more. That's my take.
Great, thank you.
In our institution, it's generated a lot more work around assessment because of the AI in AI, academic integrity, the other AI. So what we're trying to do, obviously, well, we've changed the workload to give people more time in the marking because of all the reporting of AI and the extra work that entails. We've got an extra academic integrity officer that's taken a second academic integrity officer to look at this. And in the assessment group, they're looking at different ways of teachers working with what students produce to raise their awareness of how they can use artificial intelligence in an ethical and effective way that's going to help them learn. So, and what we've done, the materials development community of practice, is looking at how we can use AI in materials and then have students engage with it to say, look, this isn't perfect. What's wrong with this? How can you make it better? So they're using it as with any other
panel discussion.
electronic tool to help them as a tool rather than doing their work for them. So trying to show them how to use it effectively, and that it's not perfect, and that they do have to engage brain and work with it to improve it.
Thank you. Okay, shall I move on to the next question? So the next question is from Yasmin Kurgos. It's quite a big question, and I think maybe you've touched on some of this in your introductions, but we'll have a go. What strategies do senior management apply about EAP teacher professional development?
I feel quite strongly on that as well as creating the structures and the opportunities, it is really important that we give people time and that we give people money. I think those are the three areas: the structured opportunities, time, and money. We can't always give people the time when they want the time, but within the year there needs to be time. And other people, I think Liz mentioned, funds. So we've got a conference fund that people can apply to, and also a course fund for people who want to do MAs or EdDs, PhDs, etc. So I think those three things are really important. And we also have, the line management system, where there's somebody there to talk to about individual goals. And we use the university staff develop sort of online recording system where people can set their goals and then talk about how they're meeting those goals. So sort of that accountability as well, I guess.
And can I ask as well, is that both for permanent staff and contract staff? It's the same opportunities?
Both what staff and what staff?
Is that for permanent staff and contract staff? Have they got the same opportunities?
We only have short-term contract staff. One of them has been short-term contract. I can see someone in the audience, Natalie, who used to be short-term contract with us. We just have short-term contract staff in the summer for the pre-sessional, 10 or 6 weeks, or 11 or 7 weeks, in fact. And what we do is we organise the CPD year from January to January, so the pre-sessional is in the middle of it, so that everything continues through it, and we encourage our pre-sessional teachers to join the different communities and the CPD sessions. They don't have access to well, that's not quite. They probably wouldn't have access to the finance side of things, and obviously when they're not with us, we don't have to give them the time. But some of them have, for example, we have funded their TEEP portfolio applications and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Great,
I want to say something from the more general background of CUC, how we do the CPD, and every new teachers will get some training at the very beginning of his life in this university, and then we have continuous study during his whole career. We both have online courses and the offline training sessions. We also had some contests. We encourage the new teachers to learn from the senior teachers, and then we'll have some pedagogy research, and we also have some contests. The teacher will do some mock, right? Mock teaching in the classroom, and the senior teachers will be the judges. And such kind of contests are held both at the university level and at the, the city level. For example, like in Beijing, the Beijing Bureau of Education will hold such contests. So I think that was very helpful for the new teachers to get the basic techniques when they need in the teaching work.
Yeah, I came across that I was on a panel in Shanghai in a teaching competition, and it was a new concept for me, and it was fascinating. So they had some students from the university that was hosting it on the stage, and all the contestants actually taught that group of students, and it was fascinating to to see that in action. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear about. I just wanted to add, I guess going back to Maxine's point that, yeah, money talks. So institutionally finding time and money for people to engage in development is so key. And I have some wonderful colleagues who've worked really hard at my institute to carve out the CPD time, to carve out the scholarship fund. So completely reiterate that. What I did want to add that on top of that, not instead of that, any kind of informal or formalized system of mentorship can also be a really powerful tool. So we do have mentors, a system set up, and that's just an extra thing that is really wonderful to have, where people can work with colleagues in what can end up being a more informal way, even though there's a formal structure behind that.
Can you tell us how the mentor system works, Liz?
It's although the system is there, it's fairly informal once it's in place. It's that new staff come in and they will get, depending on what time of year and what program they're on, different types of induction. But then they are truly assigned or offered the option to be assigned a mentor. And we just have a pool of people who could be mentors, and there's people try to be matched of somebody who might have a similar interest or a sort of background. Works sometimes less in terms of the matching, but then it's set up and there's a suggestion of how it might work, but people take it forward on their own terms.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything?
So I know we said questions at the end, but there's a specific one to Nina in the chat about from Usha saying, Nina, you mentioned the mock teaching contests. She wanted to know if they got feedback from the participants and what did they say?
Usually the judges of the contest will give feedback during the contest. Yeah.
What sort of feedback is it? Or
What
is
sort
it
of feedback? Because I do not had a chance to get to that contest, so I think it's usually about their performances, or I don't know the exact or the appropriate word for this their performance. Okay, in the contest, from every aspect, from the language using, their gestures. I think something like that.
And do you know people that have participated in the contest?
Sorry, the question is?
People who have joined in the contests?
Yes,
Yeah,
many.
there's just a question about how did the participants feel and what did they learn or did they comment? But you may or may not know that.
I know some teachers. They are very popular among the students. When they are preparing for this contest, they got something like the lead says, the mentor system. Some senior teachers will help them to go out on university to compete with the teachers from other universities. So the winner of this contest are really good. They are when they come back from the contest, they teach our students, and they are very popular.
Can I just? Oh, sorry, Jennifer's got her hand.
I was just going to say I've been a judge in our TNE. I've been invited along to judge one of these competitions when they do it at this college level within the school, and it's quite interesting because the judges might not be subject specialists, so you might have a range of judges from different areas, and yeah, they will comment on what they've noticed about how the students engaged, the language, the way that the lesson flowed, etc. All of those things will happen, but from the teacher's perspective, because I work with a lot of teachers in Chengdu, I think they see it very much as part of a way of working towards showing that they it's kind of a notch for promotion in a way, to show your place within the system. That so I think they see it as actually quite important, and they spend a lot of time preparing for it. Sorry, that's all. I mean, I could talk about it for a lot, but I'll let Maxine come in now.
And just something you said, you know, about engagement. What I found fascinating. So I was the one in Shanghai, and there was the students on the stage at the front. The teacher came up to the stage. There was the panel, and all the local dignitaries were all around this big circular table. Then in the middle there were teachers, you know, from and students from sort of local universities, I guess. So a huge audience. But what I found fascinating, and what I hope the teachers and everybody watching observed, was I think there were 6, I don't remember exactly, but 6 different teachers teaching this same group of students, and it showed how what the teacher does has an impact on what the student does, because those students behaved totally differently depending on what was happening to them. So there were teachers that use a very social constructivist approach, and the students were talking and engaged. There were others who came at a much more didactic approach, and the students were silent. It was the same students, and this for me really drove it home how much what happens, the environment of the classroom, depends on what the teacher does. And also those students at the end, it was a local teacher that actually won, and the students were absolutely, really.
I mean, I've only seen it within the system that it's just when they're preparing, I suppose, to choose the people who will then go further up. So it's in small groups. But again, I think what you're saying, Maxine, about the difference in the teachers, what's also really interesting is the comments from the judges are very diverse, and can also, I mean, because you're getting different perspectives, you can be totally in disagreement about it, but in a way that's quite interesting for a teacher, because they've got to decide what they're taking on board. It's not one voice, as there might be in other observation situations where you have one person observing you and discussing.
Thank you. I was going to ask Nina as well. Is that something that teachers can put on their curriculum vitae? Their kind of profile.
Yeah,
Will they list those
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Right. Natalie, I wondered, do you want to pick a couple of your questions and ask them?
Okay, I just asked a load of questions to see if anybody would be interested in any particular one. So before I ask a particular one, is there anything that anyone noticed, any particular question that they would like to answer? Because I'm really interested in hearing, senior management perspective on these issues. Yeah.
Yeah, the panel, were there any of Natalie's? It was about the third one down. Any of those that you'd like to answer?
Or maybe perhaps to make it a bit easier. I mean, because it will be touching some of mine. Questions have already been sort of asked in different ways, but I think, the issue with EAP is it's such a diverse activity, and an EAP practitioner may be doing a variety of different things, and that the practitioner will have different sorts of backgrounds, will come from different backgrounds. So I think the issue for me was that of alignment. Okay, alignment. How do you achieve alignment in the educational beliefs and practices in your centres, the ones that influence the curriculum development, the classroom practice, etc.
Can I have a go? Our centre has become a lot more diverse, but back in 2014, we set up our principles. So development, reflexivity, autonomy, collaboration, transparency, and transferability. And those principles come into everything from advertisement, interview process. You know, they're there, they're living part of the centre, and things come back to them. So when questions arise about practice, I think we try and go back to these principles. Now, a couple of years ago, we revisited the principles and tried to, apologies if you can hear my dog, correct? Tried to see what people understood by these different principles. And we set up Padlets, and they're there. And now when new teachers come in, they have access to those Padlets. And one of the questions I had recently was, okay, so, but what does collaboration actually mean in this centre? And for me, I don't want to put a definitive definition, because I believe in principled variability, differentiation, if you like. So in slightly different contexts, with a different group and a different subject area, you know, whether you're in a class with in-sessional or pre-sessional or you IFP students, the way you're going to do things varies slightly. But if we've all got those shared principles, and also what we show on our CPD SharePoint site, we have a page where we have our underpinning theories and our favourite phrases. So our favourite phrases are things like process, not product, lifting off the page, samples, not models, things like this that we say all the time. Meddler in the middle is another one that we would talk about. So these common terms that we use, which sort of bring us together as a community, are there defined for the people. But the underpinning theories, we've got LCT up there, we've got SFL up there, we've got lots of different things. I noticed the other day one thing isn't up there is anything to do with corpus linguistics, actually. But I don't want to dictate one. I want people to investigate what interests them and to share with the centre the perspective of that theory on any sort of issue that we're talking about. So again, so for me, alignment, Natty, doesn't mean standardization, if you mean, you know, we've got to be pulling in the same direction. And there are people who come into the centre and leave quite quickly because they realise that our centre is not the place for them. You know, they have a different understanding of what EAP is or should be, or ways of working. So I think that's quite important. And some things fail miserably. Recently, we tried a common read, for example. I don't know if you were aware. We were going to set up a common read for students. And I thought, well, let's do it with staff first. So we chose this book called Think Again by Adam Grant, which was chosen by a panel. And I really loved it because it really talks to a lot of our principles. But when we introduced it at the beginning of the year, there was quite a reaction from staff. You know, you're forcing us to read this book. Well, you know, you give students reading lists, you know, can't we ask you to read a book, you know? Currently, we have 22 books that have not been picked up, you know, since we started in September. I'm going to come back to it in our Max chat and sort of explore why people aren't engaging with it. But yeah, so it's trying different things, I guess, but not insisting on not dictating one very narrow line, I guess, is my way of seeing it. Sorry about the dog.
That's one issue that comes up in centres, I think, is about CPD and whether it should be voluntary or compulsory, or maybe a mix of both as well. Yeah.
I just come in from the TNE perspective, because what TNE has done for me, and I think for many other people involved in that context, is it really helps us question the principles and beliefs that we come into our teaching with. And not to say that we throw them all up in the air, but when you get two very different educational systems coming together, you get a lot of questions on both sides about, well, what's the principle behind this? Why are you doing that? And although that can be difficult and time consuming and awkward at times, ultimately it's really productive to go back to some of these questions. Why do you do it this way? And sometimes you can sort of immediately say, well, we have this principle and that's why. And occasionally, well, we've just been doing it this way. Let's go back and check what the original reason and the principle was. So right now with our partners, we're doing a project on EAP assessment literacy, because this is something that came up as we worked through with our partner on the ways we assess and the ways we align the teaching with the assessment. And it's turned into a really big project, because although there is some alignment, we were coming at our assessment from quite different perspectives. And I think saw somewhere in the chat something about collaborative development, and that this has to be collaborative, and we're still working through it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I also want to add something from the Chinese side. And Natalie's question about EAP practitioners may find themselves in a variety of different roles. That's true. I think Stella might be a good example, right? Yeah, we apart from the teaching, we plan together several cultural events, and we are planning to do more next year. And I think the cooperation, we discussed it together. That's very important. Sorry about the message. I don't know how to delete it. So I think we do it voluntarily, right, at the very beginning with no funding, but we are glad to be partners, and we are also glad to have students to support us, to be with us during this cooperation. So I think the preparation of these cultural events or the joint research will have a lot of support, both from the administration and from the students, and also our staffs from both universities.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's that teachers having different roles, but it's you know, I mean, Nina and I, we enjoy it, and I'm sure everyone in this room does, but there will be some EAP teachers who are uncomfortable with being made to do something different, or which relates to another of your questions, Natalie, which was being resistant to doing more than, or something different to what their job is. I don't know if it's a good point to jump to that question, Natalie.
Well, it was about, yeah, I said the question was, how do you explain teacher resistance and how do you deal with it? So, and then I said, well, I mean by teacher resistance an inflexible attitude on the part of the teacher who is not receptive to learning new ways or adapting to the workplace ethos. But there may be other interpretations of resistance.
Any thoughts?
It's something that came up because I did the observer training, and it's something that came up in that. So in lesson observations, particularly, yeah.
I think I'm going to go back to observations. You know, I think peer observations are really powerful. I had a teacher in a different subject from EAP in my centre who was getting complaints from students because of their style of teaching, which contrasted very strongly with the general style of teaching across the centre. And you know, there was conflict because this feedback was, you know, was threatening the identity of this teacher, the teacher's beliefs. We organised some peer observations, and I can see little chinks of change, shall we say, little chinks of light. I think it's a long process. But I think peer observation, kind of particularly observing those same students with another teacher, which comes back to what I said with the Chinese competition in Shanghai that I was there, the teaching competition, seeing your own students in class with another teacher and seeing how they are behaving in that class helps you realize that, you know, perhaps the reason why they are not doing what you're complaining about is because of something you are doing rather than because of the student. So I think that is quite powerful, actually seeing your students in another context behaving differently. But then, you know, how much resource you've got and how long you've got to invest in this long-term change process versus having a difficult conversation and saying, you know, is this really the place for you? You know, which sometimes has to happen also.
Actually, there's an interesting question or comment from Joanne in the chat that I've just noticed, which is, could this resistance to new things be because of heavy workloads and not much career progression? In my experience, I've encountered resistance from a different profile of teacher, which is the one that is comfortably settled within their contract and has got used to doing things in certain ways, and then with new people coming along, objects basically as well. So that's two different panoramas.
I'm just going to steer this in a slightly different direction because this relates to some research I've done with colleagues in the UK and China, which is training for EAP managers and how, when you talk about change management, that actually it's the managers who sometimes need the support and development in order to lead teams through change or to introduce new ways of doing things. And the work I've done on this research is that many of the EAP, we'll call them managers for want of a better word, say that they haven't had much or sufficient or the right type of development or training to help them in these roles. Some of them have become excellent managers and sort of despite a lack of training. Some perhaps are critical of themselves but might be perfectly good managers. But generally the feedback has been that's something we don't feel we got enough of. And then they're in this position and they're leading teams and managing change and perhaps meeting a resistant teacher. And so the managers might be feeling as uncomfortable as the teacher who is also uncomfortable with the change, to pick on that change example.
Thank you.
Yeah, in our centre, what I've found, we have a change management team in the university who we invited to come and do a session with us at the beginning of the year, which went down well or badly depending on who you spoke to. But also it was the professional services teams there as well as the teaching teams. And I think in many instances, particularly with the leadership and management side of professional development in the centre, our teaching teams can learn an awful lot from the professional services team because they do have a lot more formal training. And my contract, when I moved from deputy director to director, my contract switched from an academic contract to a professional services contract, unbeknownst to me for a while, but anyway. But I then had access to all this wonderful training that the professional services side of the institution is doing, which I've tried to you know, make available more to the rest of the teaching staff. So I think again, it's that collaboration and learning from each other can help a lot.
We've got Sam just mentioned about kind of, it relates to the you know, being observed, and that made me, teachers being observed, and that made me think of something in our NTU, where I mean, everybody has their end of year evaluations, and it may be the same in some other universities, but if we score a certain amount, we do get a fairly good bonus. So it's a kind of bonus performance scheme, which is quite motivational, you know, and it will also help with your promotion as well. If you get, you know, 4 so many years running, then you can kind of apply for a promotion. So I think schemes like that within institutes are really, you know, they are motivational for some people. You know, that maybe those that aren't that motivated just to do the extra work. I think that financial incentive and promotion incentive can help as well.
Yeah, we don't have that in our centre because we are not on progressible contracts. The teachers have what was in Bristol called Pathway 3 contracts, so a teaching only contract, but it's not progressible, so there's no progression, no promotion. The only way to get a different job is when one becomes available through recruitment round along with everybody else. So we have to rely very much on intrinsic motivation, if you like, and going back to Sam's comment there, to avoid the tick box exercise, it's a culture building thing. You have to rely on the peer pressure, if you like, everybody's seeing that everybody else is doing it and what good things are coming out of it, and it is a slow burn, really.
And then, you know, on a more kind of hard-nosed level, you know, it's a tough world. You know, if you want to keep your job, keep you know, in these choppy times, you've got to put that effort in. You can't just, you know, kind of stay the same and not do anything different and expect to keep your role or be promoted. That's just a fact of life. You know, and that, you know, that redundancies, and we've just gone through that at our university. That's always there. You know, it so, you know, that's what I always think, but I'm a bit hard-nosed. We've only got a minute left, so does anyone have any burning questions? I think, Carol, would you agree we kind of answered them? Have we gone along? Have we missed anything?
No, I don't think so. I think they're getting picked up through different questions. There's been a few related to working with other subject lecturers, but I think that's come up in, you know, how people have dealt with it yourself in projects or working collaboratively with them.
Great. Just okay. Yeah. Okay. Any burning questions anyone wants to answered in from the audience? No. Okay. Well, just wanted to say a massive thank you to Maxine, Liz, Evie, and Nina. I've really enjoyed listening to it's listening to what you've got to say and what you're doing in your context. It's been really, really useful. And just thank you everyone as well for the people who provided the questions as well. That's great. We put in Angelica's put in the chat box a feedback form and then just some details about doing a talk with us, if you want, if putting a proposal in. And then also, Raphael has put certificate of attendance in. So, you know, again, we're talking about CPD, so that will be very, very useful for that. So I'll bring this to a close. Have a fantastic.
Just one last thing with there is a submit a proposal if you want to do a talk, but equally if you have ideas of something you'd like maybe someone else to do, put it in, because we can try and work something up and get suitable speakers like we've got today to come and join us. Okay.
So thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Hi Matthew, I saw you.
Everybody, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
It's very interesting. 42 attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Was it 36 the last time I looked? Was it any more than that?
42, and it's like 6 or 7 of us, so
Yeah.
42.
all together.
That's
42.
great. See, we don't need Eventbrite.
Ways to pay.
Pay $10 an event. You just saved yourself $10.
Thanks, everyone. I have to run, but it was
Yeah,
really,
thank you
really
so
interesting
much, Liz.
listening to everyone
Yeah.
else.
Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maxine and Evie, Liz,
Thank you
and
very much. It was
Ina's
very, very
gone.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wonderful ideas.